I noticed Eli's bar knocking behavior early on. I waited until he was 42 weeks old, 10 months, to begin his official jump training. I had been training all the steps up to this point, gradually, since 10 weeks of age. Reward strategies, marker words, recalls to heel, to target training, extension to collection training, turns, and more. I followed several trainers' methods, including Linda Mecklenburg, Susan Sallow, Kim Collins, and Kristen Walter. I also experimented with my own ideas.
Okay.
What you are watching is raw, unedited footage of my training with Eli. In the beginning, for the Susan Sallow set point work, there's a little bit of experimentation to figure out what the correct spacing is for him to jump into the middle of the two jumps and then jump the second jump without stepping. So you'll see at times that he kind of runs over them like trotting, and I want him to jump 2 front feet followed by 2 back feet. And he goes back and forth between doing that correctly and then stepping at times, and that's having to do with how far apart the 2 jump stanchions are. So in the beginning, I had to experiment. I had to move it closer, move it further away until he started to actually jump rather than step. And you can see he kind of goes back and forth between the 2 for a little bit. And I try and mark the ones that I like. It's hard to see in the beginning. It's very difficult to follow what their feet are doing, but I'm watching his front and back feet. I make sure that I change directions and that I'm not in the same place every single time. Sometimes I'm next to him. Sometimes I'm in front of him. And I am giving a reward marker for correct behavior and a no reward marker for bar knocking. At this stage of the game, at this stage of the training, I am not correcting ticking. So every once in a while you'll hear his toes tick the bar. I am not mentioning that to him at all at this stage. I will later on.
Okay. Yeah, it's good. Target's 8 feet. Okay. Okay. Yeah, good. Okay. Yeah, good. Okay.
You can see that he is still going back and forth between actual jumping and trotting.
Yeah, good. Okay. Yeah, okay. Ooh. Lie down. Okay. Yeah. Okay. Okay. Okay.
I changed to a bend jump, and again, I'm experimenting with the width, how far apart to put the 2 jumps in the beginning. So this is when they're almost at a 45, 90 degree angle. It is a bend jump, and the reward plate is just slightly to the inside of the second jump.
Okay. Yeah.
During the Cavaletti training, I felt very, very awkward in my hand and food reward placement. It took a long time for me to get a good feel for it. And when I was doing the actual training, I felt very clumsy, and I didn't feel like I was making very much progress, or that Eli wasn't making much progress. However, going back and re-watching raw footage, which you're watching right now, I realized that he was actually thinking, learning, and trying really hard. And so even though in the moment it didn't feel great, it did work. It was working. So doing a lot of just on the ground, learning my mechanics of how to bring him forward and then stop him. And so trying to keep control of each step and looking for one step only. So in the beginning, when starting the cavaletti, my focus was on bringing him close to the cavaletti, and then one step over, stop, one step over, stop. And you'll see he hits the cavaletti a lot, or he kind of steps on it, very close to it. But he gets better as he goes. So this is a different style of cavaletti training than some of the traditional, typical cavaletti training where the dog is completely independent and trotting over several poles at a time, which I also did early on. So I did some of that, I would say probably about 3 weeks ago, from this, probably closer to 38, 39 weeks, as opposed to 42 weeks. Another session of cavaletti training. Again, I felt very clumsy still. This type of cavaletti training was very new to me, and the hand placement was very new to me. And so I just didn't have a whole lot of experience with it, which is why it felt weird. Although I think now, looking back, I was doing very well. And Eli was doing very well. It just felt weird. Kind of like learning a new skill that you've never done before, which a lot of agility people are in that boat. In between all of these jump training sessions, I was also doing other training on other days. So sometimes I was doing running contact training. Sometimes I was doing handler training. So I wasn't just doing jump training. I was probably doing jump training. This is what you're looking at in this video is part of, I did 5 sessions in week 42 and 3 sessions in week 43. And it really varied all the way up until I started competing and finishing his jump training, which is never totally finished. So the goal of this cavaletti training, that was a really good one. He just did a really nice one, very controlled steps, 1, 2, very thoughtful about where his feet are placing, very thoughtful about picking them up. So this is his first time on 4. You can see that in that last video, he did very well on the first 2 and then stepped on poles 3 and 4. But he's really trying. So if you watch how he lifts, and he's very thoughtful about picking his toes up and over. And then every once in a while he smacks one. Because he's looking at me, so he's not looking at the poles. He's needing to feel for how this works. And these poles may be too high and they may be too light. So you notice that I just rolled them over so they're now lower again. So every time I evaluate what just happened and do I need to adjust it. So I don't just stay with exactly what I've got every time. I adjust to help him and get the desired results. I'm looking for toes to be controlled and picked up. This is another session. I think this is one of our last cavaletti sessions. I didn't do cavalettis for long, but they were very valuable. And I could go back to them at any time, which is always really nice. There are lots of different varieties of cavalettis. So this is not just the only cavalettis. I've got some where I didn't get any footage of us doing them at camp through Mo Strenfield's method. Oh, here's our last session. So these are very, very close. Asking him to step, instead of both feet in one, trying to get him to step over one at a time.